She arrived in the rain. I had been told to expect a woman from the Aldenmere Pact, younger sister of their Alpha, sent in good faith as the treaty required. My council had negotiated the arrangement over 3 months of correspondence while I signed papers and ate meals alone and thought very little about it. A political bond. A clause to end the border raids that had killed 11 wolves on each side and exhausted both territories. The girl would come, we would observe the arrangement period, and the border would hold. That was all. What I had not been told was that she would arrive at dawn on the foggiest morning of the autumn, stepping down from the packed carriage with one bag and no attendant, and a look on her face of someone who finds rain entirely reasonable. She stood in the courtyard of my keep at Veldenmoor and looked up at the stone walls and the gray sky above them, and she did not seem frightened or disappointed or anything I could name. She simply looked, the way a person looks at a thing they are trying to understand honestly. My steward came to me afterward and said, "She brought one bag, my lord. She said the rest could follow, but she doubted she would need much." I did not know what to make of that. I had ruled Veldenmoor alone for 31 years. My first mate had died of a fever in the 2nd year of my reign, before the bond had done more than spark. We had been fond of each other, cautious, still learning, and after her I had closed that door. My wolf had gone quiet. Not grief-mad, not feral, simply gray and still, the way old dogs sleep near fires without dreaming. I had built the kingdom, held the borders, kept the peace. I had not looked for another mate. My council had raised the subject a dozen times, and I had said no, and they had backed away. This arrangement was different, they argued, not a mate search, not sentiment, a political bond, an alliance clause. The Aldenmere girl did not need to be anything more than present. I had agreed, which tells you more about the exhaustion of 31 years than I would like to admit. I met her at supper the first evening. My great hall was not built for warmth. The stone holds the cold in, and the candles I had set along the table seemed aware of this and burned accordingly, low and practical. I sat at the head of the table, and she sat to my left, which was where my steward had placed her, because my steward is a thoughtful man who knew I would not want her across from me, where I would have to look at her directly through the whole of the meal. She was not what I had expected. I had expected, I do not know, something more obvious. A woman performing composure, or performing warmth, or performing whatever quality her family had sent her to perform. Instead, she ate her soup without comment, looked at the tapestry on the wall behind my shoulder for a long moment, and then said, "Is that the Ashenmere or somewhere further east?" I looked at the tapestry. It was old and the threads had faded. "Ashenmere," I said, "East Shore. Before the fog breaks were built." "I thought so," she said. "You can tell by the reed line, the western shore has a different growth." She paused. "I walked it once some years ago with my brother's pack before the raids started. It was very quiet." I had nothing to say to this. It was true. The Ashenmere was quiet, and I had not walked it myself in perhaps 20 years, and I felt, faintly and without warning, that I had missed something by not doing so. "The soup is good," she said after a moment, not filling the silence with apology for it, simply noting the soup. "My cook is competent," I said. "Yes," she said, "you can taste that he means it." I looked at her. She was looking at her bowl. She was not performing anything at all. Something behind my ribs shifted. Not a great movement, a small one, the way a sleeping thing turns over without waking. I did not name it. I reached for my wine, and the meal continued. That night, alone in my chambers, my wolf did something it had not done in 3 decades. It lifted its head. I told it to go back to sleep. It did not. The arrangement period was 40 days by the treaty's terms. 40 days in which neither party was bound, in which the alliance clause could be invoked fully or withdrawn without penalty, by mutual agreement of both packs. My council had built the withdrawal option in deliberately. They had not been certain I would tolerate 40 days of a woman in my keep, and they had wanted me to have a graceful exit. I had thought this was considerate of them. By the 5th day, I had stopped thinking about the exit. She did not make herself difficult to be around. That was the thing I could not explain to anyone, though I tried once with my steward and gave up halfway through. There was nothing remarkable about Saren of Aldenmere on the surface. She was not the sort of woman who fills a room. She came down to meals on time and spoke when spoken to, and otherwise moved through my keep as though she had always known where things were, quietly and without ceremony. My cook liked her within the week. She had asked him one afternoon about the herb garden and listened to his answer for 20 minutes without pretending to look elsewhere. My stable hand found her standing in the door of the horse barn on the third morning, not asking to come in, simply looking at the horses with the focused patience of someone who likes animals and is not trying to impress them. She didn't try to pet them, he told me later, as though this were a mark of great wisdom. She just watched. The gray mare came to her eventually on her own. The gray mare had bitten the last 3 women my council had brought to my hall. I did not tell my stable hand this. I began to notice things about her the way I had not let myself notice things about another person in a very long time. The way she always turned slightly toward the window when she was thinking, as if the light helped. The way she held a cup with both hands when the hall was cold. She read from a small book she carried in her coat pocket and never mentioned what it was. Once I walked past the courtyard garden and she was sitting on the stone bench there, reading, and she looked up and said, "It's going to rain in about an hour," without looking at the sky. And I stood in the doorway not knowing what to do with myself, and then it rained in 40 minutes. She never asked me about myself in the way people ask when they want something from you. She did not inquire about the kingdom's finances, or my reputation, or the stories they told about me in the southern territories. Once she asked me what the fog breaks on the Ashenmere had cost to build, and I told her, and she nodded and said, "That seems worth it," and that was the end of it. Another time she asked me how old the keep was. I told her. She said it feels older, and she was right. On the 12th day it rained heavily, the kind of Veldon Moor autumn rain that comes in sideways and turns the moorland the color of pewter. Neither of us had anything arranged for the afternoon. I found her in the small library. My keep has one, sitting at the table not reading, but looking out the narrow window at the rain. "Do you want something?" I said, which was not what I meant to say. I meant to say something about the room being available to her, or about the afternoon, or nothing at all. She turned from the window. "I was wondering," she said, "whether you are lonely." No one had asked me that, not in 31 years. My council managed my schedule, and my pack managed their own affairs, and my wolf slept, and I ruled. Loneliness was not a category I had examined lately, the way you stop examining a healed scar. "That's a direct question," I said. "I ask direct questions when I'm curious," she said without apology. "You don't have to answer." I sat down across from her. Outside, the rain came harder against the glass. "Yes," I said, "I think I am." She looked at me for a long moment. "I thought so," she said. "I am too, mostly. I've gotten used to it." She paused. "That's not the same as being all right with it." "No," I said, "it isn't." We sat with that for a while, the two of us, while the rain did what Veldon Moor rain does in autumn, which is everything. My wolf inside me had come fully awake now, not urgent, not howling, just present and watchful, the way it had not been in 30 years. I noticed that I did not want the rain to stop. I noticed that I did not want the 40 days to run out. I should explain something about the mate bond, for those who have not felt it. It does not always arrive like a thunderclap. I know the stories, the instant recognition, the golden flare, the alpha who sees his mate across the ceremony hall and knows in one breath what she is to him. That happens. I have seen it. But the bond is older than theatrics, and sometimes it is more honest than that. Sometimes it arrives the way a winter does in Veldon Moor. Not all at once, but a degree at a time, the air changing before the snow, the light going a different quality, and then one morning you step outside and realize the world has shifted entirely, and you cannot say which day it happened. That is what was happening to me, and I did not name it. I told myself it was gratitude for the peace she brought to my hall. I told myself it was the reasonable pleasure of competent company after years without it. I told myself my wolf was responding to the presence of a steady, calm pack member, which is a thing that happens, a thing with a rational explanation. I am a king who has governed a difficult territory for 3 decades, and I have become very good at rational explanations. I applied them to Saren of Aldenmere like a man applying plaster to a wall that is, unmistakably, beginning to shift. On the 20th day, I stood in the courtyard and watched her walk across it toward the small garden she had adopted. She had done something to the late autumn beds that had apparently pleased my groundskeeper enormously, though I had not asked what, and I noticed that I had been watching for her every morning, and pretending I had not. I noticed that I knew the sound of her step in the corridor now, and that I distinguished it without thinking from the steps of everyone else in my keep. I noticed that the evening hours, which had for 30 years been simply the hours between supper and sleep, had become the hours during which we sometimes sat in the library without the need to make them into anything. I noticed that the thought of the 20 days remaining felt like a wound I had not yet looked at directly. My wolf, fully awake now and showing no signs of returning to its long sleep, looked at her across the courtyard with a steadiness that told me everything I was pretending not to know. I went inside and found my steward. "The border lords," I said. "When are they due?" "Day 40, my lord, as arranged. Lord Brennan of the Western Holds and Lord Kerr of the Southern Border to witness the formalization or the withdrawal." I nodded. "All right." He looked at me with the particular careful neutrality my steward has perfected over many years of knowing when not to ask things. "Shall I send word to Aldenmere as well? Her brother's pack will want to know the outcome." "Not yet," I said. He nodded and went away, and I stood in the corridor for a moment, the stone cold at my back. And I thought about what I was doing and found I could not think about it clearly, which was unlike me, and which told me, if I had been willing to hear it, everything. The 20th day. We had fallen into a pattern, which is how I can tell you the days with precision. The pattern gave them shape. Mornings. She was in the courtyard or the stables before I was. We would speak briefly or not at all, and both were equally possible. Middays, she had found her own occupations, and I had mine. Evenings. Supper in the hall, and sometimes the library after, and sometimes just the hall itself with the fire going and neither of us needing to make conversation. That evening she came to the library first, which was unusual. She had the small book out, though she was not reading it. When I came in, she looked up, and there was something in her face that was different, more decided, as though she had been working something out. "I want to tell you something," she said. I sat across from her. The fire was low. Outside, the Veldenmoor wind came off the moors in long pulls. "My family sent me," she said, "because I am the one they could spare. I want you to know I'm aware of that. My brother was kind about it. He is kind about most things, but I understood what it meant. I am the sister who has not managed to be remarkable, and so I was the one sent to the arrangement that might come to nothing." I looked at her. She was saying this without self-pity, which is the only way it could have been said and meant anything. "I'm telling you," she continued, "because I think you should know who you're dealing with honestly. I am not performing modesty. I am not someone who has been hidden away and is secretly extraordinary in a way that will reveal itself dramatically." A small pause. "I am fairly ordinary. I notice things. I ask questions. I like rain and I like silence, and I am better with animals than with crowds. That is what I am." The fire settled in the grate. The wind pulled at the stones. "Saren," I said. She waited. "My council arranged this because they thought I would not object to 40 days of a quiet woman who would not ask too much of me," I said. "They were trying to manage me. They often try to manage me, and they are usually right, too." She watched me carefully. "They were not wrong," I said. "I would have objected to almost anyone else." I paused. I am not a man who speaks without knowing where the words are going, and I did not know where these were going, which meant I was going to have to follow them honestly. "You are not ordinary," I said. "You are the least ordinary person I have sat in a room with in 30 years, and that is not a compliment I expected to have to give." Something shifted in her face, not dramatically, not a performance, just a slight settling, as though something she had been holding had been allowed to rest. "I notice things too," I said. "Lately I have been noticing you." She said nothing, but her hands, which had been folded on the table, moved, not toward me, just differently, a small relaxation, as though she had been braced for something else and could stand down. "I don't know what to do about it," I said, which was the most honest thing I had said to another person in a very long time. "No," she said, "neither do I." A pause, "but I think that's all right for now." The fire burned. The wind ran along the walls. My wolf inside me was entirely still, not dormant, not sleeping, but simply complete, the way a searching thing goes still when it has found what it has been looking for without knowing it was searching. I did not sleep for several hours, but it was not an unhappy wakefulness. Day 33. The news from the border was better than it had been since the raids began. My patrol captain brought the reports, 3 consecutive weeks without an incident. The presence of the arrangement, formalized in even its temporary form, had quieted the border lords on both sides. The Aldenmere wolves had pulled back their perimeter patrols. The fields that had been burning in August were ceding over. I read the reports at my table and felt something that was, unmistakably, dread. The arrangement was working. The treaty was holding. The border lords had scheduled their arrival for day 40, and the formal witnessing of the bond's confirmation or its graceful dissolution was coming with the ordinary momentum of things that have been arranged and will proceed regardless of what a man feels in a library on a windy night. A bond confirmed meant Saren would stay, would be formally named my alliance Luna, would have the protection and the standing of my pack. A bond dissolved meant she would go home. I sat with the reports, and I thought about the word dissolution, and found that it had the texture of something I did not want. My wolf agreed with some force. I went to find her. This was becoming a habit, seeking her out when I had something I was not saying to anyone. She had become, without any deliberate design, the person I went toward when I needed to think out loud. She was in the courtyard. The autumn light was failing early, the way it does at Veldenmoor past the equinox, and she had her coat pulled close and was looking at the far wall where the stonework was old and the moss had come back along the joints. She heard me coming, which she always did, and turned. "The border reports are good," I said. "I know," she said. "Your steward told me this morning. The lords are coming in 7 days." "Yes." I stood beside her. The light was going gold and gray together, the way the moors look in the last hour before dark, and I thought, I have looked at this light every autumn for 31 years, and this is the first time I have looked at it and wanted to tell someone about it. "The withdrawal option," I said. "Do you want it?" She was quiet for a moment, not evading, thinking. She always thought before she answered, and I had learned to read her silences. "No," she said. "I stopped wanting it some time ago." A pause. "Do you?" "No," I said. Another silence, but a different kind. The gold going from the light, the gray coming in, both of us standing in it. "Then we should probably tell the lords something different from what they're expecting," she said. "Yes," I said. "Are you frightened?" she asked. I considered this honestly. "I am unaccustomed to wanting things," I said. "It feels somewhat like fear." She nodded as though this made complete sense, which with her it apparently did. "Me too," she said. "I've been unaccustomed to it for a long time." We stood in the courtyard until the light was fully gone and the keep's lanterns came on one by one. And then I offered her my arm, which I had not offered anyone in 31 years, and she took it without ceremony, and we went inside. My wolf all the way inside me moved like a warm current, like a tide coming in after a long, still season. Not urgent, not desperate, the deep and certain movement of something returning to its natural place. Day 38. Lord Brennan of the Western Holds arrived a day early, because he always did, because he was the sort of border lord who believed arriving early gave him an advantage in negotiations, and who had not yet learned that it simply meant he spent an extra day in my keep being managed by my steward. He was a large man with opinions about territory law, and a tendency to fill silences with more opinions about territory law. He had come with his own pack of 6 wolves and an aide who took notes. He met Saren at supper. I watched him take her measure in the way border lords take measure of political arrangements, assessing her usefulness, her rank, the weight she would carry as an alliance piece. He asked her 3 polite questions about the Aldenmere pack, and listened to the answers with the part of himself that was filing information rather than the part that was actually listening. Saren answered his 3 questions, and then asked him one about the Western Holds flood boundaries, which turned out to be something he cared about enormously, and spent the next portion of supper allowing him to explain it in some detail. And I watched her do this with the focused, genuine attention she brought to everything. And Lord Brennan, who was a difficult man in negotiation and a harder one in conversation, relaxed by degrees and became, by the end of the meal, almost pleasant. Afterward, when she had gone to the library, he said to me, "She's steady." "Yes," I said. "Good for an alliance bond," he said. "Sensible, won't cause trouble." I looked at him. "No," I said, "she won't." And I thought, you have understood approximately none of what you just observed, and I am not going to explain it to you, and it does not matter. Lord Kerr arrived the following morning, the last day before the formal witnessing. He was a quieter man than Brennan, more careful, and he noticed more. He watched Saren speak to my cook about something in the kitchen passage and came to find me afterward. "She's been here nearly 40 days, he said. 39, I said. How does she find Veldenmoor? I thought of her in the rain on the first morning, looking up at the gray walls without complaint. I thought of her in the library on the 12th day, asking me if I was lonely. I thought of her in the courtyard in the failing light, her coat pulled close, saying I stopped wanting it some time ago. She finds it honest, I said. Kerr was quiet for a moment. He was not the sort of man who says the thing he is thinking directly, he circles it. The withdrawal option, he said, is that still on the table? No, I said, it is not. He nodded slowly. I see. A pause. Congratulations, then, or is that the right word? I thought about the word. I thought about 31 years of careful, sufficient solitude. I thought about a woman I had not expected and a wolf that had woken up after decades of gray sleep and would not go back. Yes, I said, I think it is. Day 40. The formal witnessing was held in the Treaty Hall, not the Great Hall, the Treaty Hall, which is smaller and more serious, with the border pack standards on the walls and the old territory maps behind glass. Brennan and Kerr were present with their aides. My counsel stood along the left wall. My steward had the papers. Saren came in from the far door. She was wearing the gray wool she had worn most mornings here, not the formal dress her family had apparently sent that remained, as far as I knew, in her one bag unused. She was not performing this. She was simply here, the way she had been simply here every day for 40 days, and I found that more anchoring than any ceremony could have been. I stood at the front of the room. The treaty required one of two declarations: the bond confirmed, which was a formal but simple statement of continuity, or the withdrawal invoked, which dissolved the arrangement cleanly with mutual regard. My steward had both prepared. I had told him the night before which one we would use, and he had not asked questions, and I had been grateful for that. Lord Brennan was reading over his notes with his aide. Lord Kerr was standing still, watching. My council was arranged in their careful line, faces composed, doing what council members do, which is maintain expressions of appropriate neutrality while calculating outcomes. Saren stood at the other end of the room, and she was looking at me, not at the papers or the lords or the standards on the walls. Just at me. Her hands were loose at her sides. She had that quality she always had of simply being in the present moment without performing it. I thought, I have been king of Veldenmoor for 31 years, and I have made decisions of greater consequence than this one in terms of territory and policy and the movement of pack borders, and none of them have cost me anything like this. Not because this was difficult, because it was not. That was the thing. It was not difficult. It was the opposite of difficult. It was the clearest thing I had known since I first took the seat of this keep and understood what I had been given and what it required of me. The clarity was almost disorienting, like stepping from fog into a morning that turns out to be bright all the way to the horizon. My wolf was completely still and completely awake, and it had known this since approximately the 12th day, and it was being very patient with me about the time I had taken to get here. I did not reach for the papers my steward was holding. I said to the room and to the lords and to Saren at the far end of it, I am not invoking the treaty declaration. Brennan looked up. Kerr went very still. The arrangement period is concluded, I said, and I am telling you, all of you, the pack and the holds and the border and anyone who needs to carry this word back to Aldenmere, that Saren is not an alliance bond. She is not a treaty clause. She is not a political arrangement or a border consideration. I stopped. I looked at her. She is my mate, the one my wolf chose. The one I stopped believing existed somewhere around the 15th year of ruling alone. I am telling you this in front of witnesses because it should be known clearly, not as a formality, not as a careful statement for the record, but as the truth of what is. The room was very quiet. Saren was looking at me, and her face was doing the thing it sometimes did when she was working something out. But this time she was not working anything out. She had already known. I could see that she had already known, and that she had been waiting, not impatiently, not with anxiety, simply in the way she waited for rain and for horses and for the truth of things, which was to say with a steady and unhurried attention. I crossed the room toward her. The lords and the council and the aides with their notes were there, and then they were not. Or rather they were. I could see them in the edges of my attention, Brennan with his mouth slightly open. Kerr with the still face of a man whose calculation has just been substantially altered. My counsel exchanging the careful glances of people who have been trying to manage a king for 3 decades and have just been reminded what happens when they succeed. I stopped in front of her. "I did not expect you," I said, which was not a formal declaration and was not in any of the treaty documents, but was the most accurate thing I could say. "I know," she said. "I didn't expect you either." "The bond is real," I said. "My wolf chose you on the 12th day and has been waiting for me to catch up." She looked at me for a moment, and then something shifted in her expression that was not quite a smile but was adjacent to one, the internal kind, the kind that doesn't need an audience. "Day 5, she said. "What?" "I knew on day 5, she said. "When you sat across from me in the rain and told me you were lonely, nobody had asked you, had they?" I thought about 31 years. "No," I said, "no one had." "I thought so," she said. "I did the same thing then that I've been doing since. I just waited for you to get there." Behind me, I was aware of Brennan saying something to Care in a low voice, and of my steward making a small, quiet sound that was, if I knew him at all, relief. My counsel was no doubt recalculating the political landscape, with the focused efficiency of people for whom this is a profession. None of it mattered in the least. I took her hands in mine, both of them carefully, the way you hold something that has weight and meaning and that you do not intend to put down, and the mate bond rose between us not as a thunderclap, but as the thing it had always been. A long, quiet recognition, like stepping into a room you have been looking for and finding that the fire is already lit, that it has been lit for some time, waiting for you to find the door. "Will you stay?" I said, which was redundant by any legal or treaty measure and which I needed to say anyway. "I have one bag," she said. "I told them when I came that I doubted I would need much." "I remember," I said. "It turns out I was right," she said. She became my Luna not with a ceremony designed for it, but with the slow, accumulating weight of days. The border lords rode out the next morning with different reports than they had come expecting to carry, and those reports would carry west and south and across the Aldenmere boundary, and that was good and appropriate. The treaty held better than it had held before, which my counsel noted with satisfaction and attributed to the right causes. The Ashenmere border was quiet through the winter, and the following spring, which is saying something. But those are the facts of consequence. The other things are the things I find myself wanting to tell you. She asked my cook for the recipe of the winter soup on the 3rd week after, and he gave it to her, and then they made it together, which had apparently never been done in the history of the Veldenmore Keep, and the result was better than either version had been separately. My steward told me this with the expression of a man reporting a minor miracle. She finished the book she had been carrying in her coat pocket, the small one she had never named. I asked her about it. She said it was a survey of moorland water plants, which she had been reading for 3 years and had never found time to finish before. She seemed entirely satisfied. The gray mare chose her, conclusively, by the end of November. My stable hand sent me a report about this as though it were pack intelligence. She did not change the library or the courtyard garden or any room in the keep beyond the garden beds, which she improved by means I could not follow but which my groundskeeper could, and he talked about it to everyone willing to listen, which was most of the staff. We talked in the evenings. We talked about things I had not talked about with anyone in decades, about what I wanted the kingdom to be and what it was and the places where those two things did not meet. About loneliness and what you do with it when you have had it long enough that it has become a kind of furniture. About rain. About the Ashenmere and whether the East Shore reed line had changed in the 20 years since I had walked it. She thought it probably had. She wanted to see. In the spring, we walked it together. The morning we left, my wolf ran ahead through the fog and did not look back, and I understood what it meant. Not urgency, not impatience, but the animal joy of a thing released at last from a very long stillness. Running because it could, because the world was open and it had someone beside it, and there was no reason any more to be still. I had stopped believing in the bond a long time ago, in the way you stop believing in things you have tried for and not found, and the not finding becomes permanent in your chest, and you build over it. I had built a kingdom over it. I had filled the space with duty and the gray competence of a man who has outlasted his grief and learned to be sufficient. And then a woman arrived in the rain on a fog morning in autumn with one bag and no complaints, and asked me if I was lonely, and waited for me to catch up. She was my mate, the one my wolf had chosen without my permission, on the 12th day, or perhaps the 5th, or perhaps before the carriage had even stopped in my courtyard. The one no one, not her family, not my counsel, not either of us, had thought to hope for. I had been king of Veldenmoor for 31 years, and in all of them I had never once made a decision that felt like this. Inevitable, quiet, and entirely mine. She is beside me now, as I tell you this. She is reading something, not the moorland water plants, something new, and the fire is going, and the evening has settled over Veldenmoor the way evenings do here, gray and honest and without pretense. In a little while she will look up and say something that is either about the book or about the rain, and I will answer, and that will be enough. It will be more than enough. It will be everything I had stopped knowing how to want.